Go. So yeah, thank you, Jessie and Fran. And we have a treat now. We have the word Gibraltar seems to have been every other word this afternoon. And our final witness is the Honourable Albert Isola MP, Minister for Digital and Financial Services from HM Government for Gibraltar. Minister, thank you for being with us. Do you want to introduce yourself, first of all, for the record?
Thank you, yes. My name is Albert Isola. I am charged with the responsibility for financial services with the Majesty's Government of Gibraltar. Should I also say that I had with me the Chief Executive of Gibraltar Finance, who has driven much of the work in respect of the matters under discussion today, and also Mr. Julian Saccarello, who is the Head of Policy at the Gibraltar Financial Services Commission. You can't see them, but they're here in the room with me.
Okay, thank you. So good value we've got in you then. So we will start off with our Minister here, John Glenn.
Thank you, Dr. Hook. And Minister, thank you very much for taking the time to join us this afternoon as we start this scrutiny process. And I think it would be helpful for the committee if you could set out the nature of the relationship between the UK and Gibraltar in financial services and how you see the measures in this bill, whether you welcome them and what do you see as the most significant elements to that legislation?
Thank you, Minister. I think I must start by thanking you and your team at Treasury in particular, as well as the regulators, the PRA and the FCA, who have been engaged with us in really a 3-year process, looking at all the areas of market access, all the challenges, the opportunities, and how best we could, in a way, replicate what we had previously under the European Union to post-Brexit and the end of that and the beginning of the new. It's been a interesting and almost enjoyable journey. It's been extremely hard work, but the professionalism of your team has been exemplary, and I'm extremely grateful to all of them for the conversations we've had, sometimes difficult, but always positive and always proactive and looking to find solutions, for which I'm extremely grateful. In terms of the relationship between Gibraltar and the United Kingdom and financial services, I think it's important to remember that when the United Kingdom joined the European Union in 1973, because the United Kingdom was responsible for Gibraltar's external relations, we joined with you. And as a consequence of that, for many, many years, up until 2001, we were striving to enjoy the benefits of that membership. And with that came the responsibilities of adhering to the many directives and complying with the regulations that were passed from Brussels. And so when we talk about 28 or 27 member states, there was another competent authority, which was the Gibraltar Financial Services Commission in financial services, that was able to issue a banking license or an insurance license or any other financial services license in exactly the same way as all the other competent authorities were within the remainder of the European Union. So what I would ask the committee to think through today is Gibraltar has complied with all European Union directives and legislation in all areas, including specifically today financial services, and that includes obviously all the anti-money laundering perspectives that you may wish to discuss later. So to all intents and purposes, Gibraltar and the UK, from a financial services perspective, are aligned. So we have the same rules. But as we've talked over the past years with your teams, it's about outcomes. It's about where we get to and how we get there. And so we've been through a very long assessment with an independent contractor jointly engaged by Her Majesty's Government and the Government of Gibraltar to deep dive into insurance, which is the largest area of interest between the United Kingdom and Gibraltar, and to analyse in enormous detail sort of a gap analysis to see whether we were getting to the same outcomes, and where we felt we haven't, we dealt with them. Because parallel to that process, we also had what we call the Legislative Reform Programme, which is a 3-year piece of work which started actually before Brexit, completely redoing our financial services legislation. So what were before 87 pieces of legislation, we now have one financial services bill which encompasses everything and is far more aligned to FISMA than we were previously. And the other interesting point that I would mention, this legislation came into play in January of this year, and there's one section of it, section 22.1, which specifically refers to the Gibraltar regulatory regime, aligning the standards and supervisory practices with that of the United Kingdom. So we had that before, we had it again in 2020, and clearly as we draw closer with the new regime that we're discussing today, that relationship will continue and I hope prosper in order that consumers in the United Kingdom can have more choice, more competition, and at the same time knowing that we meet and match with our aligned standards of law and practice with that of the United Kingdom. I apologise if I've gone on for a bit longer, but I thought it was important to put the discussions of today into that context.
Well, thank you very much. I think it's extremely helpful to set the context for the committee, and I don't have any further questions. I'll invite some of my colleagues to perhaps probe a bit further on what you've experienced the last few years and where you see the future. Thank you.
Thank you. We have until 5 p.m. for this session, so there's a good length of time. Shadow Minister Pat McFadden.
Minister, thank you, and thank you for giving us your time this afternoon. There's a very long-standing and warm relationship between the UK and Gibraltar, which informs the measures in the bill. And what the government's really trying to do here is create a sort of mini single market in financial services between the UK and Gibraltar to ensure your continued market access to the UK in the future. I'm sorry we can't do much about your market access to the other 27 states to which you currently have market access, but that is sadly beyond the powers of this committee. So can I just ask you, in simple terms, looking at the Gibraltar provisions in the bill, are you happy with them as they stand?
I think the fundamental question for us is, do we continue to have market access? The answer to that, of course, as you will know, is yes. As you've rightly pointed out, we lose the single market access to the main European Union with the United Kingdom on the 1st of January, and this is where we will look for our future. But if I put it a slightly different way, some 90% of our financial services business before Brexit was with the United Kingdom. And so that puts it to focus just how important this piece of legislation is for all of us here. And in each of the different areas in which we've worked, we've developed a niche, an area of specialization and expertise, which has served those that work here with us well. And we very much hope that that will continue into the future.
Thank you. We've heard quite a lot of reference today about the proportion of motor insurance policies in the UK that are sourced out of Gibraltar. I think it's roughly 20%. Looking at this market access regime established by the bill, is it Gibraltar's ambition to grow the proportion of UK purchased financial products from Gibraltar, for example, in other areas of insurance or other savings products or other parts of financial services? Is this a platform for which you want to grow?
Well, as the Minister with the responsibility for financial services, I would love to see our businesses grow. Of course I would. But of course doing that responsibly and doing that in a manner which matches the standards that we have with the United Kingdom in terms of the regulatory approach. I think the reason we've been successful in motor insurance is because we've developed expertise, we've developed specializations in the firms that have come here. It's not that we switched on one morning and had 20% of the United Kingdom motor market. That has grown over a 15-year period, and as they have grown, so have we, in terms of the business we do with the UK. There are a number of other businesses that have tried in other areas of insurance, and they do well, but nothing like the success that the motor insurers have enjoyed in working with the UK.
My final question would be, and I touched on this with the ABI and their evidence earlier on this afternoon, given the platform that is being created by the bill, do you see a potential for attracting any businesses currently in the UK to relocate to Gibraltar? Would there be any tax or corporation tax advantage for them in doing so, for example?
My experience, put quite simply, is that all of the firms that have come and set up here in the last 7 years while I've been in this job, not one of them has ever said they're coming for tax purposes. There is a tax differential. I think the rate in the UK is 19% corporate tax or profit tax. In Gibraltar, it's 10%. But that's never been cited as one of the reasons for setting up in Gibraltar. It's far more about our agility as our jurisdiction, the accessibility of the regulator. You know, I can arrange to meet with every single insurance company in Gibraltar in 2 weeks if there's something that I'd like them to do or be more conscious of. That's just not possible in the United Kingdom. And so the accessibility of our regulator for all of our insurance firms is the number one point that they measure as to why Gibraltar has been so good to them. They have that access, they have that contact. And then, of course, you have the expertise that we've developed, the lawyers, the accountants, the insurance managers who are able to provide the services that they need. These are far more important to the firms than the corporate tax. And I have to say, if I may allow me this plug, the quality of life obviously is also important too. The sun shines here for a little longer than it does in the City of London, and I think that's important too.
I'm sure it is, and your weather's certainly better. I don't have any further questions. Thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you. Okay, so for the SNP, Alison Thewlis.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. Thank you, Minister. You mentioned that obviously insurance is the largest area. Are there any other aspects of financial services that require any further legislative action, or are you content with the way in which the legislation is set out?
I didn't hear you, forgive me, I didn't hear the question particularly well. Would you mind repeating that question?
Apologies. You are quite far away, I suppose. You mentioned that insurance is the largest area in which you have dealings. Are there any other aspects of financial services that require legislative action that aren't covered in this bill, or does the bill cover everything that you require it to?
Okay. This legislation is like the enabling legislation, if I can call it that. So what will happen after this is done is the Gibraltar regulator, if I can just say what it does for us, this requires alignment of law and practice. And it also requires, as a secondary condition, if I can call it that, cooperation between regulators and between governments. The aspect that you're referring to, what will actually happen post, I expect 1st of January of 2020, when we begin the serious work, the Treasury and us will work through each of the different activities that we wish to have access to the United Kingdom. And the Treasury will then satisfy themselves, or not, that we meet the standards required in order to be able to have those pass through a statutory instrument in 2022 as one of the subsets of the activities that we can do. So insurance will be one, banking will be another, funds will be another. So all of these are different subsets of controlled activities regulated in the United Kingdom, which we will work with the Treasury over the coming 12 months to satisfy them of our ability to meet and match the standards that we've discussed here today.
Thank you. And presuming that all of these standards are obviously met at the current time, you don't have any worries about meeting those standards or any implications that not meeting those standards would have?
No, not at all. But again, simply because today we can passport our services under the European Union or the Gibraltar Order, mirroring the European Union provisions. And so we both have the same rules today. Solvency II in insurance, in banking, in AIFM with the fund sector, we all have the same rules and regulations today. And so I have every confidence that we will meet the standards that Treasury will ask us to meet in the course of the next 12 months in each of those different areas, because we are at one already today.
Thank you. Can I ask, do you feel that the rules as they're set out in the legislation give adequate protection for UK consumers?
Yes, because we need to be aligned in terms of authorisations, in terms of supervision, in terms of capital requirements, in terms of enforcement. So the whole array of measures that a UK consumer would expect to receive in the United Kingdom, they can fully expect to receive from us also. So yes.
And you don't foresee any diminution of that protection that UK consumers have?
No, absolutely not. On the contrary, as the UK moves in whichever direction it moves post the 1st of January of 2021, whether there is divergence or not, we will obviously, in respect of the areas that we seek market access, follow those through.
Okay, thank you very much.
Do I see any further? Yes, Stephen Flynn, if you make your way to the mic and speak right into it. Yeah. I think, yeah, those will also work, won't they? Yeah. Any of those? Although you've got Duncan Hames's name, maybe move that. Yeah.
I'm sure Duncan would be overjoyed to be associated with myself. So thank you for presenting yourself before us today and for the information you've provided. I'd just like to follow on from the comments of the Shadow Minister, or the questions from the Shadow Minister in respect of the competitive advantage that Gibraltar may or may not have. As I see it, the bill seeks to create a level playing field, but it could be inferred that Gibraltar does have that competitive advantage over other constituent parts of the United Kingdom, indeed the home nations, given that it does have the ability in relation to corporation tax and indeed other taxation that the home nations don't. How would you assess that? And I appreciate that you did seek to answer Mr McFadden in that regard, but do you feel that we could see a situation where businesses will seek to take advantage of what is clearly a level playing field with a competitive advantage for yourselves?
The simple answer is no, and I'll tell you why. If you think about it, we've been setting our own tax rates for the last 20 years, during which we've had access to the United Kingdom market through the European Union single passporting system. And I don't think, I've never heard in a financial services environmental discussion talks about different tax rates in different member states of the European Union, let alone Gibraltar, having an impact. So it's not as if there is an advantage being created by this bill, which will endure the 1st of January of next year and beyond. We are where we are today, where we have been for the last 10, 15 years with different tax systems. I don't think you'll find a company which requires to make the level of investments it requires to make in terms of capitalization for these firms, particularly insurance, to make a judgment call on a difference of 9% corporate tax, assuming they can make a profit. So, as I said before to the Shadow Minister, the information that I have from the firms that have come here is that that is very low on their list of priorities, if at all. So I don't see it having the impact that you suggest it will do, because if it were, that would have already happened a long time ago. As I mentioned, the firms that are in Gibraltar today have been here for a very long time, and as they've grown, so have we. So our market share has been 20% for the last year or two. It was a lot less before, as those businesses grew and became more successful.
Do I see any further questions from committee members for Minister Isola? No? Okay, in that case, I must thank you, Minister, for joining us remotely from Gibraltar itself. And as our final witness for the day, that's the end of our evidence sessions, our fourth session. This committee meets again on Tuesday, not in this room this time, it will be over in committee room 14 for the first of the line-by-line sessions, 9:25 a.m, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. So I think it just remains for me to ask the Government Whip to move the adjournment.
I think to move for further consideration of this bill be now adjourned.
The question is that further consideration of this bill now be adjourned. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. I think the ayes have it. Order, order.
The proceeding has ended. 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 The proceeding